Intergalactic Ace, designed by Jack Kastorf, with art by Jack Kastorf, and published by Art of Steele. You're the new hotshot rookie space pilot on the block, and it's time to prove that you have what it takes. The only way to do this is to score 5 victories in one-on-one dogfights and become an Intergalactic Ace. Play begins with each player rolling to see who goes first, and the first player is marked with a special token to show who began the game. The goal of the game is to defeat enemy ships, represented by cards, or even to battle it out with other players and steal their hard-earned kills. Remember, first to 5 wins. On their turn, players may upgrade by either choosing an upgrade card, assigning 3 upgrade points to any resource they wish, or by taking 1 scan resource point. Second, they can choose to use that scan by turning over the top 3 cards on the enemy ship card deck, and then save a card to fight on a later turn. Finally, you can choose to enter a dogfight. Reveal the top card of the enemy ship card deck, or you can choose to fight a saved card from the previous scan. Either way, if your resources are high enough, we turn to the dice. The pilot rolls 2 6-sided dice, and if the roll is higher than the defensive level of the enemy ship, then it's a kill. If you draw the right card, you get the chance to face off against another player. In that case, the defensive rating is always a 7, and if you win the roll, you get to steal one of their kills. The game ends when a player becomes an ace with 5 kills, and that round is completed. If during the round another player scores their 5th victory, then ship resources will be compared to see who wins. So strap in, check your scope, and see if you have what it takes to become an ace. Alright, so we got another game review that we're doing for a game that is currently being crowdfunded. This one's over on GameFound. Now, the last one, we were fortunate enough to somebody kind of reach out to us when we did Gadget Grid. This one, the designer was looking for a few more people to take a look at it and give a review, and I volunteered our services. They did send it to us pretty quickly. It's taken us a couple weeks to get around to finishing this up. So we're going to talk Intergalactic Ace from Ace of Steele Publishing.
Right. So we got this game. The reason it's kind of taken us a little while to put out this review of it, we like to send a copy over to the designer with some of our initial thoughts, and then get them to come back with us with maybe explanations on questions we had, or rules clarifications if there's anything like that, just to make sure that when we actually put out a review, that we are understanding of all the components and all the pieces, that how they fit together, so that any criticisms or anything like that we have are fair. I think that's a big thing that we wanted to make sure of across any game that we review, especially newer ones that are not quite at market. So, I guess let's jump into this. This game, first off, it looks gorgeous on the table.
Yeah, I gotta say, I really like the components. And kind of looking into it a little bit, this is the first game that they're making, and it seems that they have a business where they're doing like laser cut wood.
Right.
So that's where they got the components from. So they're making them themselves, is what it seems like. First off, they look great. I'm absolutely for this. Like, I'm just going to make it myself stuff. Right?
Yeah.
And it did really well. The all the ships, which are your player boards that you get, are cut out of like a lightweight wood. Kind of think like balsa, I guess.
Yep.
And then the components, as far as the pegs that you use to track, are all cut. And I mean, I don't think I had any issues with any of the components like fitting or staying in place. Some of them stuck a little bit, but I think the copy that we got is also a prototype copy, and it wasn't allowed to dry all the way, so there's a little bit of stick in there.
Yeah.
Again, prototype copy. The final one, I'm pretty sure, is going to be fine. But I mean, even then, everything stayed in place. I didn't have to worry about knocking stuff off. That went really well. The ship tokens that you get to mark your kills all fit onto the ships. They've got like a little cutout in them and stuff.
Yeah.
It all felt really good from the component standpoint.
Yeah, it's nice to see a game that is made out of all wooden components as opposed to like the plastic stuff that we usually get with most modern games, which I know a lot of that is cost saving effectiveness and things like that. So that's one that kind of sets this one apart from other kind of modern games, is that everything is pretty much made out of wood. Everything fits together pretty nicely. Like you said, I didn't have any problems either with my board. There were a couple of them a little sticky, but nothing that would cause me to not want to get or play this game.
Right. Components were great. Let's jump into gameplay, because that is where we have spent the majority of our time working with this game. Now, we've probably gotten more plays on this game than we have of anything else on our shelf right now.
Yeah, that's probably true. I think part of that was because we were kind of struggling with how we wanted to describe this game.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot to it. So with the initial kind of intro section we did on this, kind of gave a little overview of how the game works. But basically, it's a game where you're trying to rack up these kills. You're trying to get 5 kills in order to win the game. First person to 5 wins. It uses mainly a dice rolling mechanic for combat, as well as you have a few stats that basically matter to see if you can actually fight whatever you flip over from the deck. First off, let's just get this out of the way. This game is heavily random.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everything about the game, or the vast majority, from your starting card to your upgrade card to who you're going to fight, there is a lot of randomness in there. There are a few mechanics that kind of help mitigate some of that, but not enough for it to make like that much of a difference. Like, the way I kind of describe it is, I feel like I have an equal chance of winning this game if I'm sitting across the table from you, who is a, like, board game semi-expert. I don't know what the rule. I don't know how we classify board game people. Or if I'm sitting across from somebody that's never played board games before.
Right. And to be fair, he did reply back to us in the communications we had with him, saying that designing this game, the thought process behind it was he was looking to create a game that he could play with people who are not really board gamers.
Exactly. Right. People that really kind of are just going to play the game. They're not going to worry about strategy. They're not like some of us who, by the second go around in a game, we're already trying to figure out what, like, the best path to the win condition is, because there is no clear path in this.
Yeah.
You are at the mercy of the dice.
Yeah.
Right?
And that being said, as people who oftentimes put themselves at the mercy of dice playing TTRPGs, to me, there are still too many feel bad moments. So my kind of comparison as we were talking through this was when you're playing like an RPG and you have these moments where you roll great on the dice and something great happens, like, everyone celebrates that moment. Like, it is a great moment, you did the thing. Here, it just doesn't feel like the payoff like offsets the bad part.
Right.
So as you're playing this game, when you flip over a card from the enemy deck, it's completely random what card you'll get. It could be one of the enemy ships. It could be another player. All sorts of those things. If you don't have the stats to fight that ship that fork out, you automatically lose stats.
Right. There are 4 resources on each of the ships that are weapons, speed, maneuvering, and cloaking. And those are the 4 resources that you have to use to compare to whoever you're going to go up against, right? So if you flip over a card and it's an enemy ship, they give you those 4 stats. You have to be equal or greater in 3 of those stats to actually get into the dogfight. Now, this is after you've already spent your 3 fuel to jet into the dogfight to begin with.
Yeah.
Then you have to do a retreat, and you lose 1 point in each of those stats. Same thing if you're going up against another player. That's the part where it just kind of it's like a kick, like it.
Not only do you not have an opportunity to try to get a kill after already spending your turn plus the 3 fuel, you also now lose stats that you need to have built up in order to fight another thing.
And that's the basic version of the game. Also, there is the mechanic of the scan that we can talk about, and that kind of mitigates that. So what you do, one of the resources that you have on your ship, you can have up to 2 scan points. And you can get those either by, if you draw an upgrade card that has a scan on it, which are few and far between. So, again, some randomness there. Or you can do what's called a manual upgrade, where you can either assign 3 resource points to any other stat on your player board, or you can take 1 scan point. And the scan, I think, is huge for actually working your way into a win. Because what you can do is you can draw the top 3 cards off of the enemy card deck. and then save one that you want to fight later, because you can't fight and scan in the same turn.
Right.
So it does cost you a turn to do this, but that's it. A turn and one scan point. Then you can look at the top 3, find one that you think you can defeat or one that you may be able to go up against later, and hold it until you're ready to actually fight that card.
Right. So what that mitigates the randomness of the card deck, but one of the games we played, I actually had a scan card ready to go for my 5th kill. It came around to my turn, I flipped the card, I was going to fight it, and then still rolled and didn't get it.
Right. And it was a low defense rating, too.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that...
Nothing is guaranteed.
Yeah, I still, again, I will use this term a lot as we talk about this game. It was a feel-bad moment.
Yeah.
And those happen in board games, especially when you're dealing with dice. And I get that. I understand it. I've played enough games to get that. But I also played enough games to know that if that is the only thing that you have giving to players, it makes it tough for them to want to come back.
Yeah.
So that being said, we've tried multiple strategies to try and figure out if there's a way to kind of mitigate this. And the designer did send us kind of a reminder. There's a section in the back of the rulebook with homebrewed rules.
Yes.
Basically. Some things that kind of change the way the gameplay works. But I think because a core mechanic of this is not only the dice rolling, but the randomness of the draw deck.
Yeah.
It's tough to mitigate that with this. Now, I will say one of our critiques about this game is that it takes a long time to build up your stats in order to be able to viably go after ships.
Right, because at the very beginning, you get a starter card, which places resources onto your player's board. But it's like 2 or 3 of each, right?
Yeah.
It's not a lot. And playing through it, the magic number that we found for your combat stats, I think was 7.
Yeah.
If you have all 4 of your combat stats at 7, then you should be able to enter a dogfight with anything you flip over.
Yeah, it was about 80% of the deck. I think you were fine. Not because it doesn't include the player cards that are in there,
right?
Which we'll talk about that here in a minute. But most of everything else you would be able to fight. But again, if you didn't get that, if you were in that 20%, you automatically lose 1 from every other stat.
Right. I was going to say the risk versus reward is still brutal.
Yeah. But what it does, there is a section or a homebrew rule set that you can use that kind of mitigates that. And I think, honestly, it should be included just base game.
So let's talk about what's actually in the homebrew section.
So there are a few optional variants that he put in the rulebook specifically. The main one that I think should be included, bar none, is the one called Fully Loaded. So instead of just getting a starter card at the beginning to basically set your stats, you also get dealt 3 upgrade cards, which the upgrade cards are random in the stats that they affect. Some of them do affect across the board, but most of them are like 2 or 3 points here or there just to kind of give you that boost.
Right.
Again, random, just so you know.
But in the base game right now, the way it works is you have to spend your first 3 rounds minimum upgrading.
At least that, if you get lucky draws on that.
Right.
Most of the time, it's probably 4 or 5. So what this does is basically gives you those first 3 rounds.
Right.
So you start with these upgrades instead of having to wait to get into them.
Yeah.
So that does probably shorten the game time, which isn't very long anyway, so I think that's fine. But it does allow you to actually get into the meat of the game
faster.
Yeah. So I think 100% that should be straight up. Make that part of the game, and then you can run from there.
We also tried a variant of our own where we started with all of your combat stats at 5, and then you add the starter card onto it. And that helped as well. That really jumped you right in.
Yeah. I think something along those lines needs to happen to eliminate those initial turns. Yeah. Now, argument can be made that somebody could try to go for a card early or try to use those turns to get scans or something like that. So I do see that, but honestly, although scans help out, and maybe it's my experience, but the cost of a turn in this game is so influential.
Yes.
Because if you go down one turn, it can mean the difference between winning and losing because there's no real catch-up mechanic.
Right.
Some of the other variants that they have in here. So there's a shields up variant, which normally when you have a player versus player fight, the roll that you have to beat is 7, which is kind of an average. This allows the roll to be based on the player's shields, which the shields is a 1 through 10 number on the player board. So it's possible the player will have more shields, but more than likely it's probably going to be less.
Right.
So that's one of them. The next one that he actually recommended was Go to Warp, which when you are playing this game, you want to fight something, you spend your 3 fuel. This allows you to spend 3 additional fuel to raise the dice number by 1.
Yeah. See, that doesn't seem like a lot after playing the game. I mean, you're giving up 3 more fuel, which is essentially another turn at a fight somewhere for just 1 on 2d6.
Yeah.
I would, if it were me, I would have changed that mechanic and let you like re-roll one of the dice.
Yes. I think that is a good choice. I think the ability to re-roll would be excellent because I feel like it needs to be equivalent.
Yeah.
So if you can spend 3 fuel to fight something, then you should be able to spend 3 fuel to like re-roll.
Yeah.
I think that would be an excellent fix, honestly, because 1 point. So there are only 2 numbers in which 1 point makes a difference: the tie number and the number just below it.
Yeah,
those are the only 2 numbers out of 12 numbers that make a difference.
Right. Meaning, the only thing that's going to change anything is going to be right there. If the defensive level is a 6, right? And you roll anything other than a 5 or a 6, just adding 1 point does nothing for you.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I do, like, it does make sense that you can wait and see what your roll is to add it, so, like, you don't waste it.
Yep.
But I still think it's not influential enough for 3 fuel.
Yeah.
Sure, if you were in that spot where you tied, then yeah, that would make it great. Or if you were below and you could move it to a tie, yeah, that's great. But again, you're talking about a 1 in 6 chance of being able to actually make use of that.
Yeah.
Whereas if you roll low, then you're talking about every number below that.
Right. Right, exactly.
You also get an opportunity to try and make it better. Now, bringing it back, that creates risk versus reward. Because then if you're tied with it, you know it's going to be, the only thing you lost was a turn and 3 fuel, which sometimes that's the best you can ask for. But it gives you the opportunity to wager yourself to whether or not you want to try and go for a win.
Right.
You may still tie or you may still lose, but I think putting that in the player's hands is good.
Yeah, I like that a lot better because you're actually getting to affect something and you're not really leaving it to that random roll.
Yeah, it gives you an opportunity, to really try again. Now, I like push your luck mechanics. One of my favorite games is actually the Quedlinburg, which is a bag building game where you are trying to draw tokens out of your bag and put them on your pot, and you're trying not to let it explode. So it is a constant push your luck mechanic to try and put more ingredients into the pot without hopefully making it explode. So that mechanic right there is right up my alley. Like 100%, let's throw some push your luck in there because I mean that is what it is, absolutely.
Right.
But it also provides an opportunity if you did get a bad roll to bail yourself out.
Yeah,
or at least try to.
Yeah.
And I think that helps mitigate the feel bad moments, at least in that regards.
Yeah, I think that would make like a huge difference in just how you feel going into your turn. Because when you do go into your turn, one thing that I've said is this game feels more focused on the resource management than the actual combat, and the game is about being an intergalactic ace. Right. So that kind of, it just like, and I get it in the real world, believe me, if you're going to blow something up, it takes a lot of planning. But I'm not in the real world. I want to play, I'm here to have, this is for me having fun.
Right.
Right? So I'm ignoring all of that. because that's what you want. You want the win. You want the big moment. I like that change. Just that simple change.
Yep. So one of the other variants is change your luck. It recommends, or it says you can use a D12 instead of 2D6. Honestly, I don't think that changes a whole lot. With the exception of you have a 2 is the lowest you can roll on 2D6. You can roll a 1 on a D12. But that doesn't really matter here because there's nothing with that low of a thing.
Right.
But the other thing that it adds is in player versus player battles, it's a roll-off.
Yes. That is something that I think needs to be standard.
Yeah, I think that is a great addition. Now, I guess let's use this as a quick segue to talk about player versus player battles because I want to get this in to tie it together. Right now, player versus player is completely random.
Yes.
You have to draw the card from the deck or scan the card from the deck in order to be able to fight one of the other players. I don't like that. Because what happens is that it feels bad if you are the player with the least amount of resources and you fight the player to your left. This guy has won every fight he's had. He's never had his resources knocked down. Meanwhile, you've been getting the shit kicked out of you because of bad rolls or whatever.
Right.
You have no option. You immediately have to retreat off of that.
Because your combat resources, those 4 important ones, are going to be well below his. So you're going to lose one more of those. And you've got to run.
Especially if they're at like 9s or 10s.
Yeah.
The only way you're going to be able to fight them is if you are also at 9s and 10s. I don't like that.
Yeah.
So we were kind of brainstorming an idea of how to kind of mitigate that or fix that. One, I think you take those cards out of the deck. I don't think the player versus player should be random.
Right, I'm with that.
I propose possibly making it a choice. And then we talked about, well, we don't want to keep picking on the same person over and over. So Disney Villainous, if you guys haven't played, is a wonderful game where you get to play as one of the villains. Mm-hmm. Each one does different things and has different goals and all that. That's all great. But the mechanic that I would bring over from that is the fated mechanic.
Yeah.
So in the game, you can what's called fate somebody, which means you basically pull something from the hero deck and put it on their board. It's usually one of the good characters from their respective movies. But once that happens, that person cannot be fated again until another person is.
Right.
Or in a larger player setting, there are 2 of those. So they get 2 opportunities to, somebody else has to be done. I think something like that would be beneficial in here. I don't know what you would necessarily call it.
Stardocked.
Sure. Wonderful. 100%.
I'm the big idea guy. That's what I'm here for.
But something like that would be awesome because obviously they want to take the opportunity to hit the person.
Right.
Like, because if somebody gets behind, that's an easy hit. And I know what you're thinking. Man, that sounds like that would feel bad. Yeah, you're right. It would kind of suck at first. But then that automatically leaves that person is good until somebody else attacks.
Right.
So it gives them, I would say, at least a couple turns to build up. Because what happens in player versus player battles, when you beat that player, you steal one of their kills.
Unless they don't have any, and in which case you take shields.
Right. And as the game kind of plays, shields are less important than kills, obviously. But this offers an opportunity for a catch-up mechanic.
Yes.
That's the big thing that I think this game is missing. Because in all of our plays, the biggest thing that we found out, if somebody gets ahead early, it's very hard to beat them.
Yeah.
Because the only thing you are relying on is them to have unlucky draws, which once you reach a certain level in your resources, there is no unlucky draw, or it relies on a unlucky dice roll.
Right.
Which even then, I mean, that's not.
Some people get hot at the table, man,
and it only takes 5 to get them to win. So, what this would allow is then you would be able to target that person specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So if we keep the resource rules the same way, it would force you to have good resources, which that is what it is. But if you had those resources that could actually fight them, then you would be able to try and steal their kill to make it as a catch-up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I think that is one of the things this game needs. I don't know if that's necessarily the best way to do it, but I think it should always be an option.
Right.
And like I said, using that fated mechanic or Stardocked, as we are, going to let him know, it allows a person who is behind to have a sort of immunity per se.
Exactly.
Which helps to give them opportunity to build up and build up and build up. So that's one of the changes we would make that I wanted to, as we mentioned, player versus player stuff. I don't mind the roll off mechanic necessarily.
No, I kind of like that. Again, I feel like you're getting more input into it. It's not just random, like here's a number I got to beat, I get one roll for it.
Yep.
As a roll off, you're getting to getting to go head to head, like my luck versus your luck, which again, Intergalactic Ace, you're some hot shot rookie pilot, you're going to be pushing it every now and then, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of feels like it fits.
Yeah, I could definitely see, like I said, I don't have a problem with that. Like I'm not 100% sold on it being the best way, but I think it works.
Yeah.
So the other one, well, let's talk about the last variant that's actually mentioned in the book, and then we can keep going from there.
Yeah.
So boss battles is the last one. In order to fight an enemy ship card, you have to have superior or equal stats in all 4 combat categories. Also, if you roll a tie, you lose 2 stats from your best combat stat category. And if 2 or more are tied for the best, lose 2 stats from each category that are tied for the best. So, I don't like this one.
This one feels like it's just making the losses harder on you and the battles harder to get into. It doesn't necessarily change the makeup of combat.
Yeah, this feels punishing to me.
Yeah.
Which, I get it, it's called boss battles. So, I see the thing behind it, but for me, I don't know that this is one that I would include. Now, that being said, if we were able to make a sort of cooperative version of this game, or a cooperative variant, like that's when I think you include something like a boss battles mode.
Yeah.
Like, because that screams to me like, yeah, like this is something we're trying to work together to fight or something like that.
Right.
So I think as the game sits now, it's probably not something I would ever play with, because it just feels almost too punishing to me.
Right.
But yeah, so those are all the variants that are kind of included in the book that we can talk about, or including in there and trying to mix up the game a little bit. And we talked about kind of our thoughts on gameplay. The one other thing that really that I was not a fan of was it seems to me that the combat stats are just arbitrary.
Right. They're labeled as weapons, cloaking, speed, and maneuverability.
And to me, it feels like they don't do or mean anything with the exception of being an arbitrary comparison to another thing.
Exactly. They could be 1, 2, 3, 4, and if you look at the card, the enemy ship card, and 1, 2, 3, 4, you can compare ratings, and that's it.
Yeah.
Right. It's an arbitrary name that comes from sci-fi. Like
just kind of general ship things. One thing I would like to see is making the stats matter.
Yeah.
Like for something other than just comparison features. Like making it something as if, if your speed is this many, like you get an extra reroll, or you can reroll 1 die or something like that. If your weapons are 2 greater than whatever you're fighting, you get +1 to your die roll.
Yeah, exactly.
Like something along those lines that allow you to make them matter.
Yeah.
Like that way they're not just these random numbers or these arbitrary numbers that are just for comparison's sake, but like, yeah, let's make them matter. If your cloaking is 2 or 3 greater than whatever you're fighting, maybe it's 1 easier to defeat them.
Right.
Their defense
you can
is
take 1
less.
defense off of their defense rating. Yeah.
Well, something like that makes it makes it matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was the one thing for me that I as somebody who comes from a Magic card background where every number on that card means something.
Right.
Like it matters in some way, not just for comparison's sake, but it does something. I want to see that. I want to have that. And all these suggestions we're making does add some depth to this game.
Right. It definitely adds some more complexity. Right now, this thing is rated as a 2 out of 5 on Board Game Geek for its complexity rating. So the stuff that we're adding would bump it to maybe a 3. Yeah. And of course, we're coming at this from the perspective of gamers, board gamers, people that play and do strategy. And again, when talking to the designer, Jack, he said that this was designed to be as simple as possible because he was trying to keep it simple for people that didn't play games. And I can totally appreciate that.
Yes.
But you got to sell it to the public to get to the next one, right?
Right.
He did also talk about his plan is to make an expansion.
Yeah.
More enemy cards, like a wager system maybe that you could put in there, which I love that mechanic.
Yeah.
Like these two are going to go at it and we get to play some bets on it beforehand. Yeah, I'm down for that. That would be good. But to get the expansion out, you got to get the game funded.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I got to tell you, I feel like the bones of this game are solid.
Yeah. It's not
a bad game.
Yes.
There are some mechanics I feel that need tweaking. Like I said earlier, I feel like this was a great first step in designing a game.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I feel like right now what we're doing is looking at it and saying, okay, how could this be better? How could I break this out, play a 15, 20-minute game of this, and walk away with everybody, like, relatively feeling good about it? Like, even if I lost, but I lost and I was on the stick because I'm an ace.
That's what I think I want more from this game, is I want to feel like my decisions matter.
Yeah.
And I feel like the randomness takes a lot of that right now from where we're at. That being said, all the stuff that we've talked about adding, I mean, you could still have a simplified version.
Yes.
Like, this is how you play it if you don't want all these extra rules. Like, if you just want to straight up sit down, roll some dice, like, here's this game mode. Because we're not talking about changing any components or anything like that. Like, this would all be just additional rule sets. I think if you take the player cards out, you'd probably want to include a few more ship cards, enemy cards, because we cycled through the deck a couple times in a few different games.
Right.
So,
and I do want to say, too, that the enemy ship cards are kind of awesome.
Yes. Yeah, 100%.
They're spoofs on well-known sci-fi, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's one ship that there's like the body of the ship, and then on the back of it, it has 2 engines that are connected like by long kind of like trailing arms, and then there's a saucer section up front, right? A silhouette that anybody that has dabbled in sci-fi would recognize immediately from like the Star Trek series. But this one is named the USS Entrepreneurship, right? Because like Enterprise, Entrepreneurship, like you got to see what he did there. Like I love that.
Yeah.
Right. There's there's a little bit of like potty humor in there with the tortoise.
Yep.
You know, and instead of the police box, it's a
Porta-John.
Yeah. Yeah. The enemy cards are great in their design and the creativity on those. And I think that falls back in with the components. Like, I love the components on the game. I really they feel so good. Our problem has just been with figuring out the gameplay.
Yeah, and this is one, I will say from my perspective, that this isn't something that, this isn't a game that I'm going to be like, I don't want to play this ever again.
Yeah.
Because it's not, like we said, it's not a bad game.
Yeah.
I think there are a few little tweaks and just some soft touches that could be done to make it, I don't even know if more like board gamer friendly would be the way to describe it. I think it's more like giving more player agency.
That's
like,
a huge part. Yeah, and I think that's it.
Back to the player.
Yeah.
So one of the things he said was he felt like when he played his in-laws in games all the time, he always smoked them.
Yeah.
Which that can happen easily in any kind of strategy game if you're a board gamer versus not. I still think there's enough in this game if you tweak those rules that anybody can still have that opportunity.
Yeah.
Because there's always going to be a lot of randomness and chance in this game.
Yeah.
Always. But I think some of the things that we recommended or kind of would change allow the opportunity for a little more player agency in that. Just those little nudges here and there that don't change the overall core of the game, but still allow it to feel better.
And I was going to say that's going to be the big thing is I think players are going to feel better if they can do more within the game.
Yeah. Because there's nothing worse than losing a game and not knowing what you could have done differently.
Yeah.
Like not having the option to have made different choices. Like you made all the right choices and you still lost.
Yeah.
Like sometimes that happens, and that's going to happen occasionally, but I feel like in this game as it sits, that's an every game scenario.
Right. Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter. It almost doesn't matter what you do. Like, it's still, like, when you lose or when you win, it's all up to chance.
Yeah. All right, so let's start out with components. We've already talked a lot about this. Right now, this is the strong point in this game. The components feel good. They look great. They're well printed. I mean, the cards are kind of basic card stock, and I'm good with that. They do what they're supposed to do. What's on the cards, the enemy ships are really well thought out. Like, it's fun. That's the fun part of this game.
Yeah.
Right? The only problem that I have is there's not enough of the enemy ships, which, again, he talked about in an expansion. He would definitely have a bunch more enemy ships to put in there, which I love that. That opens up the randomness to what you're going to fight or your opportunity there. Definitely need more of that. But, I mean, everything is good. The components are good with this.
Yeah. I think... So I like that not only are they really well made, they also fit into a nice little small box. Like, it's not a very large box game, which I think there needs to be more of out there.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like Tiny Epic Games has really cornered the market on the small games boxes.
But this box isn't much bigger than that, just to give everybody some reference.
Yeah, exactly. And there is still a good bit of game in this box. I do like the components a lot. I like that they're done out of wood. That is something you don't see very often. You know, we'll get into value later, but that may affect the price a little bit. Mm-hmm. But the fact that they're making them themselves, I think, probably helps to cut cost in that regards.
Yeah.
So 100% components, I would give it a solid 8.
Yeah, easy.
So let's talk about gameplay.
I think we picked gameplay apart because that was where we had the biggest problem. Yep. Just from our point of view, from the board gamer point of view, the gameplay as it sits right now, the basic level of gameplay it's low, right? It's like,
yeah, and I want to preface. I also want to say that we didn't mention this, but we did play this with other people who I would not necessarily consider to be board gamers. So we had some friends and family, as you know, over the past couple of weeks as they've come over. We've broken this out and played it a couple of times just to kind of get other people's perspectives on it, because our initial first look at it was not very profitable at all.
Yeah.
And it is what it is coming from our side. But after getting other perspectives on it, I like kind of where we've settled. But I do think gameplay as it sits right now is the low mark for us.
Yeah. And it's 5. I mean, like you said, right now there's just not a lot of feel good mechanics that kick in, right? I want to say though that without changing a single thing on the physical side of the components and the boards and stuff, this game has potential to push way up into like 7s and 8s easy.
Yeah, 100%. Again, like you said, the bones of this game are good. The theme behind it is wonderful. Like just all of that part is great. I think it's just it's exactly what you said. The gameplay leaves players with too many feel bad moments.
Yeah.
And I think that's all it is. If you can mitigate that, then you end up with an excellent game.
Yeah.
Because it's okay to have chance. It's okay to have randomness. I mean, hell, we love Dice Throne, and that is all random.
It's all random.
Like,
but I get 3 rolls.
Yes.
To make something happen.
Yeah. And I think giving your players something that lets them take that agency, if it's push your luck mechanic, whatever that is, I think makes the biggest difference when it comes to that. So yeah, I'm with you at a 5 on gameplay.
Yeah.
I think, like you said, we picked it apart enough, but 100%, I think that's the weak point here. And I don't think it's not so bad that I'd be like, man, I never want to touch this game again.
Yeah. I want to be real clear on that. Like, we're giving an honest opinion, an honest review of this where it sits right now. God, I've probably played this thing 20 times.
Yeah.
With just people coming in and everybody, and probably more than that, sitting down and just looking at it. But yeah, it's definitely not this game sucks, don't ever touch it. No, pick it up and figure out, play it. I think that's what this thing needs. It's just more play.
Yeah, and I think he's open to adjusting rules too, or using your own homebrew versions as well. I mean, I think the fact that he includes those in the back of the book says it.
I think that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, and 100%. I think the initial concept behind it is open enough to where you can do that. So, yeah, by all means, yeah, it's still a good game.
Yep.
So let's talk about replayability. So I think this is pretty good because this is one of those games that I would describe it more as a filler game. This is not your headliner of the night for sure. This is something when you have 20, 30 minutes to burn, like you can get in 1, maybe 2 rounds of this, no problem.
Sure.
So, I mean, honestly, I think this is probably a high, maybe 7 for me.
Yeah, for replayability?
Yeah.
Sure. The only thing that I think right now hurts the replayability is, again, this guy seems that he's building this whole game on his own, and the enemy ship cards, which are how you get your wins, are limited.
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing that's hurting replayability on it right now. If you're getting feel-good moments every time you do it, and you're getting the dopamine hit, like, the game is good. Like, I'll play it again, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think that is the one place, is the cards.
Yeah.
And the starter cards are fine. There's enough of those. No worries on that. Upgrade cards, they're probably okay too.
Yeah.
Maybe a little more of those, but they're probably fine. I really do. I agree. I think it's the enemy ships. If we could have more of those, I think that really helps out the replayability.
I'm just all for more artwork and spoofs on, like, like, I loved that part of this game. It was so, like, I got a kick out of it because I'm a big sci-fi nerd anyway.
Yeah.
Right? And there's stuff from every universe, you'll see Firefly stuff in here. You'll see DC Comics in here. Even, like, old school lore, or it may be SpongeBob for, like, the Floating Dutchman.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot in there on the enemy ship cards that were great.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely more of those would help with the replayability.
Yeah, 100%. So, I think we're sitting at 7 there. So, let's talk value. So, currently, this game is just on GameFound.
Yes.
At $35 a copy.
Yeah, I think it's 34. Yeah.
Okay. So, that is the only kind of price point we have to go off of right now. And as we kind of alluded to before, I think a lot of that has to do with components. Being that it is a majority wooden components, that just adds to the price, especially with the way wood is right now.
I was going to say, wood's expensive right now.
Yeah. But still, for $35, I think this game is good. I especially think this is a great filler game, especially if you're into like sci-fi stuff, if you like the sci-fi shows, Star Trek and things like that. This game has a lot of good, cool moments. If you're into ship combat, those sorts of themes, like the theme on this one is great. Honestly, it's not a well-used theme either.
I was going to say, I think this game does have a little bit of kind of like uniqueness to it.
Yeah. From
that standpoint.
So, I mean, we're not talking zombies or Western or pirates or Mediterranean trading or any of the other overused themes that are out there. So, yeah, I think at $35, I think this is a good game for that. If nothing else, I think the components sell it on that much.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. They, like I said, everything about the components we really enjoyed. And I think having all wood components is unique.
Yeah.
And like it feels good. Like I love the box. I love the way that it travels and everything. It's small. It's easy to pack. It's easy to take on a plane or somewhere. It's all wood components. You're not going to set off any metal detectors. That's great. And when you break them out, they are just fun, and the ships look good and stuff. Yeah. So yeah, easy. I think it's good. I was kind of on the edge, right? With like 34. What else would you get for 34? But looking at other games in that $35 to $40 range, definitely worth it.
Yeah, short of like mass market games. So think board games and stuff that are available at Target, which even then a bunch of them are higher than that now. I think 34, 35 is a good range for this game, especially because you're talking. This is, I mean, again, all custom woodwork. Like it all looks really good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just across the board. So I think I'd probably put the value on this one at about an 8.
Yeah.
Just for what you're getting in the box. So let's talk overall, because this is kind of where we want to throw everything together. I think that our main takeaway from this is the simple fact that this is a great bones of a game.
Yeah.
Like, it has everything that you would want to see, like, ready to go. I mean, this is, to me, it feels like this game is in its final stages, and there are just small tweaks that need to be made to, like, rule books and rule rewrites.
Yes.
That is 100% where I feel we are at with this game.
Absolutely.
I think everything is in place. Like, it's not even a lot of changes to make, and you could even do them as alternate rule changes or however you wanted to do it. So the one thing for us though that I think is really holding us back is just that gameplay.
Yeah.
So for me, I think I'd probably put this game at probably a 6.
That's where yeah, like you said, everything else is great. The design is great. The theme is great. The components are great. I like all of that. Just when I break it out and play it, like, I don't feel like an Intergalactic Ace. Like, I should be feeling like Tom Cruise with, like, spiky pink hair or something. and I don't. And I don't because of all of the hits that you take in this game that are just a gut punch.
Yeah.
Right? But all of that, like you said, can be easily mitigated, I feel. Because I think I like this game and I like what they're doing. I like that they're doing it themselves. This game is supposed to deliver in October of this year as well. Yeah. If you make it on GameFound.
I think this game has a lot of potential.
Yeah.
Like, I really do. And it might be something that maybe the rules changes and stuff have to wait till the expansion or something like that to make modifications to them. But man, for me, this game is, because I'm not as big of a sci-fi nerd as you are, but it's coming from just a board gamer perspective. Like, I want to like this game.
Yes.
Like, very much so. And I think that's probably what took us so long to kind of record this, is because we wanted to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah.
I think the first couple of times we played, like, you kept asking me, like, what's up? What are you doing? And I was like, there's got to be a way to make this puzzle work. And I just couldn't figure it out. And I think, like we said, a lot of our suggestions are I mean, they're not big changes, but it's more about giving the player that agency, making them feel like their decisions matter.
Yeah.
And because I think that has a lot to do with it. Because right now, whether you choose to upgrade or you choose to fight a ship or flip a card or whatever, it almost seems like it doesn't really. There's no, once you make that choice, it's like, eh.
Right. Yeah.
So,
all right, guys. There you go. Our very long, very in-depth review of Intergalactic Ace. You can find it right now on GameFound. Go take a look at it. I feel okay suggesting this game. Yeah. I have backed it myself, so I put my money where my mouth is. I want to see this thing go forward. I would love to see an expansion or just getting this game to its potential.
Yep.
So go take a look. You can tell them we sent you. Nobody will care, really. We're not anybody, but you can tell them anyway for fun.